Until you hear my talk tomorrow afternoon, you won't see the context for everything I've been saying. You won't see what goes with it, what makes it effective, because it takes a while to get there. What I want to do here is continue the perfect storm with the number 2, number 3 storm front coming in. Now, because it's been a long day, taking a lot, you leave your email out there at my desk, and I will send you all of this. My first talk and this, all documented, everything. I put it into a white paper. And someday I hope to publish it, but even a pre-published thing, I'll just send it to you as a gift. Because to me it's so critical. Let me get back here. Here we go. The first storm was the epistemological shift. And the next storm front that's moving with it and here is the emergence of the internet. Now, please don't misunderstand me here. I love the internet. How can you worship God without an iPad? No, literally, a pastor the other day said to me, I got up to speak from my iPad, and he said, "Where's your Bible?" Just like that in front of everyone. I said, "Do you have a Bible?" He said, "Yes." I said, "I got 15. I said, "Does that make me 15 times more spiritual than you?" I said, "I got thousands of research books here, everything. How many do you have with you?" None. I love the internet. But I've just got to make sure it doesn't control me. I could sit there anywhere and be on the internet for 24 hours a day, and it's what you would call a wasted life. Now, the internet. I need to give you some of the size of it and then show you the implication of it. But don't go away and say, "Oh, Josh hates the internet, he fears it." No. The internet is kind of neutral. It's how you use it. It's how you use it. It can be plus or minus. Now, everything that I share here, I've documented. In recent documentation, it's all obsolete. It's all obsolete. The moment you research out on the internet with something about the internet, not what's on the internet, about the internet, and you document, time you get it to a slide, it's obsolete. It is growing so fast. This is why a lot of groups now don't do research about the internet, because somebody spends $100,000, $200,000, they give the results to the company, it's obsolete. By the time they can process and everything else and hand it over. There's right now, according to the latest documentation, I think it's 200 million more, 2.267 billion people on the internet. I think it's more like 2.4, 2.5 right now. In 2012, most of the research shows an average adolescent spent 18 hours a week in the internet. The research in 2013 so far has now got it up to 30 hours a week. Daily emails. Now this is way obsolete. 294 billion a day. I think if I could extrapolate it out, it'd be about 314 billion every 24 hours. Whew. That means every minute, 12 billion, 250 million. Every second, 204 million, 204 million, 204. Every pastor is in competition with that. Every youth pastor, every parent, every speaker, every writer, every author is in competition with that. Of tweets on Twitter, 33 billion per day. Now think, over 300 billion emails, now 33 billion Twitters, multi-billions of text messages. Tweets on Twitter is 1,400,000,000 every hour. That's 2,029,000 every second. Active blogs. Blogs have a lot of influence. The other day, what group was it? Not Prison Ministry, but the American Bible Society was actively seeking bloggers to blog for them. Why? For influence, to get information out there. Do you know how many active, now this is way obsolete, active bloggers, and the last research shows 181 million. Every church is in competition with that. Every parent, every dad, every mother, every youth pastor. iTunes downloads in 2013, 65 billion. In 2016, hours of YouTube videos uploaded. That's uploaded every minute. Now I don't have this in my notes right here, but let me try to construct it. 3 years ago, it was 27.5 hours every 60 seconds. 2 years ago, it was 49 hours. In the latest research, and this is already obsolete, over 100 hours of video is uploaded just to one website every 60 seconds. That's 6,000 hours a minute. Every pastor's in competition with that. Every youth pastor in his youth group. Every speaker, every author, every parent in trying to raise their child is in competition with that. YouTube videos watched last year, oh boy, get your arms around this, 1,460,000,000,000 in 12 months. Articles in Wikipedia. You can laugh at Wikipedia, but some of the research I've seen shows for high school students, a number 2 source they go to for information, for papers, speeches, everything else, Wikipedia. You could say it's a little bit of a dumbed-down Encyclopedia Britannica, but you know why people like it? They can express themselves. They feel they're a part of something, contributing. In Wikipedia, and this is probably 3 million obsolete already, in 2013 so far, there's 29 million articles, not pages, articles. That's only one website, 29 million. For 29 million articles to be read by one person, this is one of multi-millions of websites to be read by one person, 2 minutes an article, would take 140,750 days. That's 389 years to read the data on just one website. This morning, I went to Wikipedia at least 6 times to double-check some information from some other sources and everything. The average teen, and this is obsolete, of data that the average adolescent's mind takes in every day is 34 gigabytes of data. You know what that's equivalent to? The data in 8,160 songs. Every day into their mind on an average. They're not quite knowing how to deal with it. Joke used to be, oh, you can never totally use your mind. You only use a little tiny part of it. They're changing that now. Some research you'll see coming out soon. It's been out there quite a while by China, Korea, Harvard, I think the University of Chicago, and Stanford. It's about the human brain of intaking so much data at adolescence. And some of the research I've seen is that within 5 hours on a screen, not the readers, not a Nook or something like that, not a Kindle or a Nook, etc. It's on a computer screen, whether a handheld, iPad, or what. That within 5 hours, they're finding the brain atrophies. The research started in China because the internet, to those in China, it's their freedom. It was a way they were able to break loose from their bondage of knowledge, everything. And the Chinese government started to notice the change in students' behavior, mentality, everything, with extensive time in the internet. So they started doing some research. Then it was picked up by Korea. Korea probably has, I could be wrong on this, but I think the best internet in the world. You can download a 2-hour movie in about 5 seconds. I mean, and that's pornography or anything. It's incredible in Korea. And the government started doing research. In fact, they, from 10 at night to 6 in the morning, they turned the whole internet off in the entire country. It backfired on them, but they didn't know what else to do because of what it was doing to the brains of young Korean adolescents. And then I think it was Harvard and then Stanford picked it up. And a Stanford professor said, the reason you're not going to see much about it right now is none of us know what to do about it. None of us know what to do. And it started out in China where they take students who were very active on the internet. Then they'd take those that weren't. They would take those who didn't use the internet. They'd introduce them to the internet for 5 to 10 hours a week. And they imaged their brains. It blew their minds what happened in 5 hours to the brain atrophy. But when you think 34 gigabytes a day, I'm convinced the reason that most young people have a short attention span is they're in overload. I mean, there's so much data, you can't have a long attention span. The world will pass you by. And there's a new term coming out now, and I wrote it down, I didn't bring it with me. It's something like data scan, that it's becoming a part of the whole culture. Is that all your truth, you just want to scan it. You just want to scan it. What is this doing? Here's several of my observations from years of working with young people and researching. Back when Al Gore invented the internet, everyone was saying, I picked up my humor from my son. You got it from Frank, and he got it from the internet, right? But back 10, 12, 14 years ago, now think back then, when you would be talking to somebody, a Christian, about the internet. Oh, how wonderful. The information is going to bring in truth, everything, certainty. It's going to be incredible. And I'm sitting there saying, no. It's going to bring about an incredible, pervasive skepticism. And it has. I've had the privilege of lecturing in over 1,250 universities. I'm not sure there's anyone lectured over 300 before. I don't know. But 1,250 universities, 250 debates. So I got a little background to say this. I am hearing questions now by 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds that I used to only hear in the third or the fourth year in the university. Why? The internet is taking it younger and younger and younger and younger. A pervasive skepticism. Like the other day in Paraguay. I just came back from Uruguay and Paraguay, I guess you'd say it here. And I was witnessing to these students. And it's the same thing I'll hear here. Well, how do you know it's true? There's so much out there. It's like what you shared earlier about the cell when you're answering. I couldn't give all the background, I didn't hear all the detail there. But how they've now discovered that with the cell, the new DNA, it does connect with that. That's all new. It's starting to obsolete everything before that. Well, this is in the minds of young people. Well, how do you really know it's true? Tomorrow they can discover something that will totally refute it. The other. I tell pastors, youth pastors, speakers, everything. You can't do ministry in the next 25 years the way you have in the last 25 years. It won't work. Why? You're going to be held more accountable, no matter how much your heart wants to serve Jesus, everything else. Your mind is going to be held more accountable than ever in history. And it's already happening. I tell every pastor, you better have in your mind every story you tell, every data you give, every statistic you give, every verse you use that is in context around a kid, because I can guarantee almost every kid out there is going to Google you. They're going to, you know how many, last year there was 1.2 trillion Google searches. That's just on Google. 1.2 trillion. And they're already doing it. I had 3 directors in CRU, Campus Crusade for Christ, that I'm a part of. And they came to me. The first one, they said the same thing. The first one has 2 kids, 15 and 17 years old. I said, oh, Josh, boy, I believe in what you're saying. I said, what do you mean? He said, several weeks ago, I came home from church. We go to a great church. And my 2 kids around the dinner table said, we don't want to go back to church. Why? Because why? He's not telling the truth. What do you mean? Well, we've been Googling him. Oh, folks, this is going to happen to everyone. It's going to happen to parents. Parents talk about sexuality, sex. You better be accurate. I guarantee you, if you teach sex the way most Christians have in the past, you'll be obsolete as a parent. Your own children's going to Google you. It is going to do a... Now, I think it's great. I really do. I think we ought to be pressed against the wall for truth. The internet is coming along as that second front in the storm, and here's the epistemological shift. And they're hitting at the same time. And this is causing this to spread so much faster. The internet is causing cultures, everything, ideas and all, to pass over years of development because of its instant exposure. It's like what television did with cultures. It took third-class cultures and jumped them over everything because of what they saw on the TV. They didn't go through all that moral development and everything for years in the culture. They jumped over. And this is what the internet is doing. It is going to force us, whether you like it or not, to be more intellectual in our gospel. It's forcing us to. We better equip our kids to be ready always to give an answer. I like the way Alex put it. It doesn't mean you're going out giving the answer. You be ready. If we do not equip our kids to handle the tough questions, I don't care how much we pray. I don't care how much you preach the gospel. I don't care how many new churches you start anywhere. We will fail. We will fail. And the internet will usher it along. But at the same time, think of all the truth, the marvelous things that comes through the internet. I mean, I think we have something, I don't know how many scores of sites we have. I mean, there's one site we work with that 3 months ago, in 30 days, 100,000 Muslim university students came to the site. A little over 3,000 trusted Christ as Savior and Lord in 30 days. What's nice about that? You got a built-in follow-up. That is what's so great about the internet. Marvelous opportunities through the internet. But we're going to have to prepare our kids to not just know what they believe, but why they believe it, or we will be undermined. And this is a phrase I've developed that it helps me get my arm around it. I say to parents, don't let the world reason your children out of their faith. That's what's starting to happen. Because we haven't trained our own children, the world can easily reason them out of their faith without even going to university. Then, the third storm front. And this is the one I wish to God I never had to speak on. Not many people do. This is one I wish to God were not true. But the problem is, I know it is. There's probably been nothing in 52 years in ministry that's robbed me of more sleep and created more restless nights than the third storm front. And on this third storm front, I've just, for 6 months, I felt that God might be saying to me, I don't want to do it. You got to take a global emphasis on this. Night before last, I'm with Dottie. We're in Dallas. She said, honey, she'd always been against it. Until the other night, she said, honey, you've got to do it. Nobody else is. This third storm front is the greatest threat to the cause of Christ in the history of the world. This third storm front, I believe, with its devastation, is the greatest problem we ever faced. I believe right now it's destroying more young people, more marriages, more churches, more pastors, more youth pastors, more families than anything in 2,000 years. It's pervasive, invasive pornography on the internet. Folks, we cannot sit here and even begin to imagine how extensive it is. Right now, and this is way obsolete, so I think I can get it up to about 21 billion, or million. 4.2 million pornographic websites. In 1998, they were able to document 14 web pages of pornography. 2003, 260 million. 2006, 420 million. 2009, 672 million. 2011, about 1.79 billion. Most of the research I've done now, all the experts just say, we throw our hands up in the air. It is so massive, we cannot determine how many web pages there are. But here's the thing, it's all just one click away. To show you how massive it is, for one person to read or look at one web page every 2 minutes would take 2,687,500 days, or 7,358 years, for one person to look at the pornographic web pages at 2 minutes a web page. And it's all just one click away. One way you average this out, history has shown that 43% of websites are pornographic or sexual in nature. 60% of all websites historically are sexual in nature. And then you can take that with the other stats and the secular ones and project it out. That's how they do it now. Of all internet searches, 35% are pornography. Now think of that. Of all churches, universities, individuals, countries, businesses, everything. Of all downloads, 25%. 68 million. Now this is way out. It's probably up to 85 to 90 million right now. Daily pornographic search engine requests. Viewers of pornography under 25 years age, 68%. Now I want you to hear me, folks, and I don't say this with glee. In 52 years, this is the first study of any problem. And I've probably studied almost every problem in the church because that's been my ministry. You have to do that to be cutting edge. It's the first time that I found a problem that there's very little difference between the world and the church, between secular young people and Christian young people. There is a difference, but it's not very significant. In a number of the research, it could be 2 or 3 percentage points. I think it's more like 15 percentage points, but I can't prove that statistically. But just through all my work, I would say it's 15%, even more difference, but that's not much when it comes to pornography. Of all 8 to 16-year-olds, 90% have viewed pornography. Of hardcore pornography, 15 to 70-year-olds, 80%. Just one click away. The recent status just out of 12 to 25-year-olds, now 12 to 17 is the number one demographic, pornography, but 12 to 25-year-olds, between 70 and 72% watch it. The adult industry itself says it's 20 to 30% are children of all their pornography. The largest consumer of internet pornography is 12 to 17 years old. Now here's what's interesting. 91% of them were never looking for it. They didn't have a bad heart, bad motive, no. Some of them from the greatest family. Boy, just because you think you got a great Christian family, you better be on your guard. If you're a homeschooler, you think you're protecting your kids, you better even more so be in the guard. 91% first-time exposure, they were never looking for it. There wasn't any motivation, bad motivation or anything. They came across it through research for a paper, a speech, homework, something else, and it clicked up. But here's the thing. Some of the research shows that up to 38% of them, they're never looking for it, will become addicted. Now, I put addiction, just personally, at 11 hours or more a week. Some put it more, some put it less. I put it at 11 for my own research. It is much more difficult to break addiction to pornography than alcohol and drugs. There's a number of reasons for it. Number one is, in your brain is a chemical hormone that God created. It's called norepinephrine. It's the memory hormone. Many scientists call it the paperclip hormone because the purpose of that hormone, norepinephrine, is to take, and I deal with this extensively documented in the bare facts on sex, love, and relationships. Norepinephrine was created to take an image, take an experience, a feeling, a motion, a visual, and to paperclip it to your memory for recall. With an average adult, it's a little under 20 seconds norepinephrine is released. For a child, less than 1 second. They put it at 3/4 of a second. Whew, norepinephrine is released to attach to memory. The other is, now you ladies are old enough and men to handle this, is with alcohol and drugs, to sustain your addiction, you need more to sustain it. That's not true with pornography. You say, what? No. You need different to sustain it. It's very unique. And with drugs and alcohol, you don't have the role play so major of norepinephrine. Or pornography, it's the major role. You see, say here's a man. He starts out with heterosexual pornography. After a while, maybe a year, maybe a month, a year, 2, 3 years, all of a sudden it doesn't satisfy anymore. There's no that dopamine rush that you get from drugs and everything else, and the arousal with it. Now, having more of it won't help. You got to have different. So they go to oral sex pornography, which is huge today. Then after a while, that wears off. Having more of it will not sustain your addiction. You have to have different. So you go to anal, which is huge today. I cannot believe when I have kids, this was down Uruguay and Paraguay, when I have them write down the question or ask it. I mean, you can be speaking of anything you want. Well, the question, what about anal sex? It's huge today among young people. They go to anal sex. After a while, it loses its dopamine rush and all. And then having more of it won't help. You go to different. So you go to maybe homosexual pornography. After a while, that doesn't satisfy. You go to bestiality. After a while, that doesn't satisfy. And almost always you end up in progression with child pornography. Well, here's what's happening. Where do you go after that? When it doesn't satisfy. You go to reality. This is why now, and I've documented it. The number one cause of child trafficking, pornography. Because of the demand it's causing, because they've gone through the progression. Number one cause of sex abuse, pornography. Number one cause of sexual rape, pornography. Because you turn to reality. The Washington Post says 11 million teenagers view pornography on a regular basis. 51% of all males in universities said their first exposure was before 12 years old. Now, that was like 10 years ago. Think what it is now. The average exposure 3 years ago was 11 years old. 2 years ago, about 10 years old. This is with the data research. The latest of the last 6-7 months, now it's 8 years old, starting to pop up. First exposure. If someone were to ask me, as a result of the last 2 years, where I finished a 5.5-month straight tour of 16 countries, 58 cities, 10-hour seminars in Spanish. I would do a 10-hour seminar, next day travel 10 hours for 5.5 months, 56,000 leaders. And I always say, you had to touch, when you speak on sexuality, you have to touch on pornography. And I would show this about 3-minute, 4-minute video I did for the internet called Just One Click Away. And if somebody said to me now, if you said to me, Josh, from your experience, not from research, not from data, from your experience, what do you think is the average age of exposure in a Christian home or non-Christian? I said, oh, that's easy, 4 to 6 years old. I have no question about it, 4 to 6 years old. And most of it comes from family members, almost all of it. Oh, in the finest Christian families. You have a 3, 4, 5-year-old, has an older sibling, 7, 8, 9. The exposure comes through the older sibling. The other, family members come over, family reunion, get together on a Sunday. Cousins. You have a child, 3, 4, 5 years old, cousins, 7, 8, 9, 10, come over. Hey, look what I found. Is the overwhelming majority exposure of small children to TV. Now, this was 6 years ago. The Department of Education, I don't know where it is here. I'll do it off the top of my mind. The Department of Education did a study of the internet in 4 to 6 year olds. And it found that 35%, now this was 6 years ago. So now it's probably up to 60%, 70%. That 35% were regularly going to the internet, 4 to 6 year olds. But they discovered that 27% of them watch pornography. Now that's 6 years old. What would it be now? Every day, over 2.5 billion pornographic emails go out. You know what P2P is? Person to person. If not, ask your grandchild. They'll tell you. It's person-to-person download where you can circumvent a computer. You can circumvent the internet, where you can download a complete pornographic film and it won't show up in your computer, your parents' computer or whatever, and it won't, it'll go around the filter almost all the time. P2P. The latest research, which is really obsolete because it was 4 years ago, is that every month 1.5 billion pornographic movies are downloaded, just P2P. And they estimate about 70% adolescents and young people. Folks, it's killing us. The studies from just recently to going back to Saddleback and others, and with research goes between 35 and 57% of evangelical pastors watch pornography. I put it now with youth pastors. Oh, this hurts to say it. Of all evangelical, fundamental, born-again church youth pastors, I would estimate 80% watch pornography. I brought together 26, 27 organizations that are top, I admire on the internet to deal with pornography. And I shared that I thought about 60 to 65%, from my experience, interacting and everything, of youth pastors, and the whole room went, oh, no. I said, what do you, oh, and everyone just said, you're way low. I said, what do you mean? They said, oh, someone went as high as 90% from all their research, their studies, in working with youth pastors. I was just in a country I don't dare to mention because I know this is being recorded. It's a country that everybody looks to one of the greatest churches in history spiritually. Several months ago, I was there for 3 weeks doing 10-hour seminars. And one pastor, they wouldn't talk about pornography, nothing. South Korea, I'll mention it. They wouldn't talk about it. We don't have a problem. Almost every pastor said, we don't have a problem. I said, there was 13 of the most powerful pastors in all Korea sitting around the table. And I had a little bit of what do you call it? Influence with them. So I really shot straight on. I said, you guys got to be crazy. I said, South Korea and the church is a #1 in the world. And I got all of it right in my room here. All the documentation, 3 full pages of it. I said, the way I determine the culture in pornography is a per capita, not how much money is spent, because China is #1 in the world with $29 billion a year. But of course, they got the largest population in the world, so it should be like that. I mean, you want to be fair. But I said, South Korea is #2, 63rd in population, #2 in total expenditure on pornography. Now you figure that one out. Said, it's per capita. Now I'm doing this off the top of my head. I think in the United States, it's $44 for every man, woman, and child a year. China, it's $42 for every man, woman, child a year. Australia is about I'm doing this off the top of my head, about $117 a year, man, woman, child. Japan is #2 in the world, $173 for every man, woman, child. Korea, $585 for every man, woman, and child in South Korea. That's over $2,000 a family. And it's just as prevalent within the church there. That's why the church is declining. I believe the star of the church has been removed in South Korea. I mean, can you imagine? Over $2,000 a year per family in Korea spent on pornography. And the pastors say, we don't have the problem. You look at China. I met one of the biggest, and to me, one of the best churches in the world. And it's a 3 self-church, government, everybody criticizes. Some of the best churches I've met are 3 self-churches, I'll tell you. And some of the wisest pastors I've met that know how to walk the line and not compromise. And I did a 10-hour seminar there. The Chinese government permitted it because it was outside of Beijing. He said, if you do it outside Beijing, we'll give you permission because you don't talk about sex in China. So we had about 2,700, I think, I'm doing off the top of my head, 2,700 leaders out. At the end of 10 hours, I went into the pastor's office. And my translator, she was about 30 years old, was there, and another fellow about 30, 32. And I saw they wanted to talk to me, but they didn't. But as soon as the pastor walked out, and I believe the pastor's become one of my best friends in the world. Oh, I love this man. I admire him. And he walked out, and immediately these 2 came right up to me and said, Josh, you got to help us. Said, we are the directors of the young adults here from it's 18 to 25. I think that was the age, 18 to 25. And they said, we have 4,000. That shows you the size of the church. We have 4,000 that we direct. And we have a problem with pornography. So I said to them, well, from just my research, everything else, I said, probably 65% are watching pornography. And both of them didn't even look at it. They threw their hands and said, oh, no, it's 100%. I said, what? I said, Josh, we can hardly ever find anyone from 18 to 25 of the 4,000 not watching pornography. I said, why don't you tell the pastor? We didn't. The pastor said, we don't have that problem here. I don't want you to talk about it. I go to Singapore. I get a call from the government. Would you have dinner with some of our people? 5 cabinet ministers, plus the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court shows up. And they brought in 2 researchers, one a professor from the university. And they said, can you help us with pornography? It's killing us as a country. And the professor in the university said, Josh, it is so widespread, and this is true in many countries now, it's becoming true in the United States. We cannot do scientific studies on pornography now, and it's used. And I said, why? He said, we can't find a control group. We cannot find a control group. I just came back from a country that's rather poor, but really starting to boom in their economy, one of the 2 I mentioned, in South America. And a pastor said, can I come over and see you at your hotel? I said, well, yeah. He came over and he said, is there any way you can help us? We know what you're talking about, pornography, but nobody will talk about it. We did an extensive study with our pastors. This was Southern Baptist, Nazarene, everything, to see how extensive pornography is. Said Josh, between 70 and 75% of all of our pastors are watching pornography. About 60% have ongoing immoral sexual affairs. But folks, that's getting to be the norm in many, it hurts to say that, in many countries. In another country, they did a study of 3,000 youth pastors. They took some of the studies off my website, and they tried to do as scientifically as they could. And they came. I'm going back to this country in a few weeks because they're bringing together 4,000 leaders. And I get 3 full days, 10 hours a day speaking for 3 days in a row to these top leaders. And they said, our study showed that of all of our youth pastors, 70-some% are watching pornography, and about 73% are having immoral sexual affairs. It's one of the most dynamic churches in the world. Folks, if we don't start dealing with this, I don't care what we do. I really don't care how much you pray, church growth, how much leadership training you do, whatever. We will lose, and we don't have to. But it's probably more difficult than evolution anything we've ever faced. Why? 87% of all men between 15 and 28, which includes Christians, 87% believe it's morally okay. 49% of women believe it's morally okay. Boy, you talk about facing a problem where you got to first convince them it's not even morally right. That is a difficult situation. We have this storm forming. We have the epistemological shift with the movement of the internet in here, which can be good or bad. But you see, 15 years ago, atheists, agnostics, the one that, Frank, you put up there, their names, had very little access to our young people. They wrote a book, not many read it. They gave a talk, not that many went. They didn't have a whole lot of really significant influence 15, 20, 25 years ago into maybe the last 2 years of university. Now they've leveled the playing field. They have almost the same access to our kids as you have. One click away. We got this front, And now the pornography front. Who's going to deal with it? If people like you don't, who's going to? Who's going to? Tomorrow I'll be talking quite significantly in the second talk tomorrow afternoon about the answer. It ties into a lot of what you heard this morning here, but I'm going to give it a little different slant. But folks, the first step is awareness. If you just drop your email, you don't have to, just drop it on my table out there, and I will send you all the documentation on this. You can go to my website. I probably got it. No, there's 2 or 3 sites has more than I do, but very few in the world of documentation on pornography than josh.org/pornography. You can have it all free. You leave your thing, I'll leave you the white paper I've done on the perfect storm. And even though I haven't published it yet, I'll send it to you. But the first step is awareness. We cannot do church as we have in the past. But tell you the truth, I'm excited about it. Oh, God, I love a good fight. I'm ready to attack hell with a squirt gun. I'm 74 years old, and the other day I started writing my thoughts down. How I wish to God, I had another life to give. Another life to live in the age of the internet. I don't. I got to trust guys like Sean and Frank. And I love you guys. I love you two guys too, but I love you, buddy. And so many others. I said there's a whole new generation coming up that are really good, that can take us to heights we've never been. But it comes down to the pastor.